Gen Z Dogs Night of the Zoomies, written by Valentin Vishnyakov, published by Nfynia Publishing. Chapter 1, Midnight's mission. The apartment was eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm, or more accurately, the silence after 4 dogs had just committed celestial homicide. Chip, Lola, Dexter, and Bella, collectively known as the Gen Z Dogs, sat around their trashed living room, each lost in their own thoughts. "Well, we did it," Chip finally muttered, lying upside down on the couch, his legs dangling over the back. "We killed the fucking sun, woohoo, I guess, right?" Bella scrolled through her phone, her perfectly groomed fur illuminated by the screen's glow. "I thought killing a giant ball of fire would get us at least 1,000,000 likes. But nope, not a damn notification." Angrily slamming her phone. "Bunch of two-faced bitches, I mean, right?" Lola watered her wilting plants, which seemed as depressed as the rest of them. "At least now I don't have to worry about sunlight burning my succulents. Small victories, haha, right?" Dexter didn't look up from his laptop. "Yeah, but what if we pissed off something else? You guys realize we probably screwed up the entire ecosystem, right? Like, we're talking Ice Age level shit. Hope you're cool with penguins and like igloos." They all stared at him with mouths open. "But it was your idea to," Chip started to say. Dexter cut him off, "That's not the point. All I'm saying is I don't think the universe just lets you kill the sun and walk away, you know." "Right," they all said at the same time. Everyone went quiet. That thought hadn't really settled until now. And then there was Midnight. The mysterious, sleek Doberman who had sauntered in and made taking down the sun look like a casual afternoon activity. Their calm, cool demeanor should have been comforting, but instead, it made the rest of the crew uneasy. Midnight had vanished right after the showdown, leaving the group with more questions than answers. "So, is anyone else just waiting for Midnight to pop up again?" Chip asked, sitting up now. They didn't even stick around for the after-party. The door creaked open, and as if on cue, Midnight strolled in, sunglasses still on, cool as ever, flicking a cigarette into Dexter's fishbowl. "What's up, losers?" Dexter nearly fell out of his blanket fort. "What the? Where the hell have you been?" he yelled, grabbing the cigarette butt out of his fishbowl. Midnight smirked and casually flopped onto the couch. "Around. Handling shit." Chip narrowed his eyes. "Handling what exactly?" "Because last time you handled shit, we ended up assassinating a star." Midnight didn't seem fazed. "Oh, we've got bigger problems than the sun." "Bigger than the sun?" Bella repeated, sitting up now, finally interested. "What could possibly be worse than a ball of fire trying to put us in a body bag?" Midnight leaned back, putting their legs up on the coffee table like they owned the place. "Have you ever heard of the Zoomies?" The room went dead quiet. "The Zoomies?" Chip raised an eyebrow. "You mean like when we get hyper and chase our own asses like they owe us money?" Midnight chuckled, shaking their head. "Not those Zoomies. I'm talking about the Zoomies. The ones that only come out at night, fast, relentless, and they don't stop. Ever." Lola's paw froze mid-spritz. "Wait, hold on. You're telling us there's some new thing we need to worry about?" Bella groaned, dropping her phone on the couch. "I just got used to not worrying about being barbecued alive by the sun. Now you're saying there's something else?" Midnight sat up, suddenly serious. "These things, the Zoomies, are worse than anything you've ever faced. They're faster than you, and they thrive in the dark. Now that the sun is out of the picture, the nights are getting longer. Which means more time for the Zoomies to hunt." "Hunt?" Dexter's voice cracked as he poked his head out of his blanket fort. "What exactly do they hunt?" Midnight gave a slow, dark smile. "Anything that moves." Chip blinked, his lazy demeanor cracking just a bit. "Okay, so let me get this straight. We killed the sun, and now we've basically unleashed a nighttime nightmare squad that's gonna come after us? Pretty much, Midnight replied coolly. Bella scoffed, crossing her paws. Of course. Because nothing in this universe can just let us chill. There's always something trying to kill us. Lola sat down next to her plants, looking even more anxious. Is there anything we can do? You know, to stop them? Midnight nodded. We can prepare. The Zoomies are fast, but they're not smart. We can outwit them, fortify the apartment, and maybe. Just maybe. Survive the night. Dexter, ever the conspiracy theorist, was pacing frantically, his mind racing. What if we built a barricade? Or maybe some kind of electrified fence? No, wait, what about a laser grid? We need something that'll stop them in their tracks. Chip smirked and shook his head. Sure, because the laser grid idea didn't backfire at all last time. He looked over at Midnight. So what's the real plan? How do we fight these things? Midnight stood up and started circling them. First, we seal off every possible entrance. They're fast, but they can't get in if we block every crack and hole. Then, we lure them into one spot and neutralize them. It's going to take strategy, and a lot of teamwork. Teamwork? Bella wrinkled her nose. Since when do we do teamwork? Lola raised her paw timidly. Maybe we should start. Now. I really don't want to get eaten by these things. Chip groaned. Fine. I'm in, but if this involves any actual running or exercise, I'm gonna need to take, like, a really long nap afterward. Midnight grinned. Trust me, if we don't do this right, sleep won't matter much anymore. The dogs exchanged uneasy glances. They had survived the sun, sure, but this? This felt like a whole new level of danger. And with Midnight leading the way, there was no telling what else was coming for them. All right, Dexter said, taking a deep breath. Let's outsmart these Zoomies. But if I die, I'm haunting all of you. Bella rolled her eyes. You're already a living ghost, Dex. Let's just make sure we survive this night first. Midnight looked at the group, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the upcoming challenge. Let's get to work. Chapter 2, Darkness Falls. The apartment was a flurry of activity, or at least, as close to a flurry as 4 lazy, indoor-loving Gen Z dogs could muster. Midnight had taken command, giving orders and instructions like they were prepping for an all-out war. Chip, Lola, Dexter, and Bella followed suit, more out of confusion and a vague sense of impending doom than actual belief in what was happening. We need to block off all the entrances, Midnight said, pacing back and forth. Zoomies always come in through weak points. Gaps in the walls, open windows, doggy doors, anything they can slip through. Dexter poked his head out of his blanket fort. Newsflash, we live in an apartment. We don't exactly have doggy doors, Midnight. Not the point, Midnight snapped. The point is, we need to secure every potential entry point. Bella, who had finally put her phone down, for once, looked skeptical. So, what? We're just gonna start nailing boards over the windows like it's the apocalypse? Midnight shot her a look. Do you have a better idea? Bella smirked. Yeah, we could call for takeout and hope the delivery guy runs into the Zoomies first. Lola groaned. This is serious, Bella. Chip was already on it, dragging a chair over to the front window. Okay, so we close up the windows. Then what? Midnight glanced around the apartment. Then we prepare for the worst. When the Zoomies hit, they don't stop until they've torn through everything. And I mean everything. Dexter whimpered from his fort. Does that include my blanket fort? Please say it doesn't include my blanket fort. Especially your blanket fort, Midnight replied with a grin. Dexter gasped. You monster. Midnight rolled their eyes and continued pacing, clearly used to the group's antics by now. Look, the Zoomies are fast. They're unpredictable. The only thing we have on them is that they're not very smart. So, kinda like Dexter. Lola quipped, dodging a pillow. Dexter immediately threw her way. Hey! Dexter shouted, offended. I'm smart. I just conserve my brainpower for the important stuff. Like which sock to chew on first. Bella muttered, earning a middle finger from Dexter. Focus, please, Midnight interjected. If we want to survive this, we need to stick together and stay sharp. The Zoomies thrive on chaos, but we can outmaneuver them. Are you sure? Chip asked, frowning as he struggled to wedge a piece of furniture against the window. Midnight nodded. I've faced them before. They're wild, but they're easy to fool. We just need to be prepared. Prepared for what, exactly? Lola asked. Running in circles until we pass out? Midnight smirked. That's one option. But I was thinking more along the lines of a trick. The group paused, intrigued. A trick? Chip echoed, his ears perking up. What kind of trick? Midnight's eyes gleamed with mischief. The kind that plays to their weaknesses. The Zoomies might be fast, but they're dumb as hell. We lure them in, make them think they've got the upper hand, and then, bam. We trick them. Bella leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. Okay, I'm listening. How do we trick them? Midnight grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. We give them what they want. Chaos. We let them think they're winning, running rampant. Then, when they're least expecting it, we hit them with something they can't handle, order. Order. Lola repeated, raising an eyebrow. Like. What? A neatly arranged living room? Midnight shook their head. No. Structure. A routine. The one thing the Zoomies can't stand is a schedule. They thrive on unpredictability, but if we force them into a routine, they'll implode. Dexter blinked. So, we're gonna bore them to death. Midnight shrugged. Basically. Bella chuckled. This sounds like something straight out of a dog training manual. Trust me, it works, Midnight insisted. We set up a fake obstacle course, one that leads them right where we want them. Once they're in, we start a routine. Something mundane. Something repetitive. It'll drive them crazy. Chip thought for a moment. Like. Feeding time. Exactly, Midnight said with a grin. Feeding time, nap time, whatever. The point is to break their momentum. The Zoomies are all about chaos, but if we hit them with structure, they won't know what to do. Lola nodded slowly. Okay, this might actually work. Wait, Dexter interjected, raising a paw. Are we really about to fight off a bunch of demonic speedsters by making them follow a schedule? Midnight grinned. Welcome to my world. The next few hours were spent setting up the tricks. Midnight took charge, directing the others to arrange the apartment in a way that would funnel the Zoomies into the living room, where the routine would begin. Chip dragged the dog food bowls into position, while Bella and Lola stacked pillows and cushions to form a makeshift obstacle course. Dexter, despite his initial reluctance, was tasked with setting up the final part of the trickery, a series of repetitive tasks designed to bore the Zoomies into submission. It was a strange sight to behold, a group of dogs preparing for what could only be described as the weirdest battle in canine history. As the apartment grew darker, Midnight's voice cut through the silence. Get ready. They'll be here soon. The Gen Z dogs huddled together, their nerves on edge. This was it. The Zoomies were coming, and they had no idea what to expect. But with Midnight leading the way, they had a fighting chance. Chip took a deep breath, his paws shaking slightly. So, we really think this is going to work? Midnight glanced at him, their expression unreadable. It's either this or chaos. Your call. Lola sighed. I guess we're all in, then. The apartment fell silent as they waited, the tension thick in the air. And then, just as Midnight had predicted, they heard it, the sound of something fast, something wild, something that didn't belong in the quiet of the night. The Zoomies had arrived. Chapter 3, The Zoomie Invasion PT1. The sound grew louder, like a high-pitched hum mixed with the scurrying of paws that never seemed to slow down. It was erratic, unsettling, like a frenzied buzz of energy on the verge of exploding. And then it happened. The door, which had been securely locked just moments ago, rattled violently before bursting open. A blur of fur and chaos shot through the entrance, moving so fast that it was impossible to tell how many Zoomies there actually were. They darted around the room at lightning speed, bouncing off walls, knocking over furniture, and creating an instant whirlwind of disorder. Holy shit, Chip muttered, eyes wide as the Zoomies zipped past him like a tornado of fur. This is worse than I thought, Dexter squeaked from his fort, clutching his blanket like a shield. Midnight, however, remained cool as ever. They stood on the couch, lighting a cigarette, eyes following the Zoomies' every move. Let them tire themselves out. They'll burn through their energy soon enough. The Zoomies were everywhere at once, leaping over the furniture, ricocheting off the walls, even sprinting up the walls like they were defying gravity. Their howls filled the room, a cacophony of chaos that made it impossible to think. Lola ducked as one Zoomie zoomed right over her head, barely missing her by inches. I swear, if one of them fucks up my fur, I'm losing it. Bella, surprisingly calm in the midst of the chaos, raised an eyebrow. You're already losing it, babe. As the Zoomies continued their frantic circuit round the apartment, Midnight slowly lowered themselves off the couch and began the next phase of their plan. All right, Chip. Now. Chip nodded, though his paws were shaking slightly as he moved toward the first part of the trick, the food bowls. He lined them up in a neat row, just as Midnight had instructed, and stepped back. As if on cue, the Zoomies began to notice the bowls. Their chaotic, darting motions paused briefly as they sniffed the air, drawn by the scent of food. For a moment, their wild energy seemed to falter, curiosity replacing frenzy. It's working, Chip whispered, his eyes wide. Midnight grinned. Now for phase 2. Bella, clearly unimpressed, rolled her eyes. We're really banking on the fact that these things are dumb enough to fall for a routine. Trust me, Midnight replied, watching the Zoomies closely. They won't be able to resist. The Zoomies, now more interested in the food bowls than wreaking havoc, slowly approached the row of neatly lined up bowls. One by one, they dipped their snouts into the food, greedily gobbling it down. Now, Dexter, Midnight called out. Dexter, who had been hiding behind his fort, scrambled to his feet and began banging on a pot with a spoon. Feeding time is over. It's nap time. The Zoomies, still chewing on bits of food, looked up in confusion. Nap time? In the middle of chaos? It didn't compute. Keep it up, Midnight urged. They're confused. That's good. Dexter, now getting into it, continued banging the pot. Nap time. Nap time. Nap time. The Zoomies, who were clearly not used to any sort of routine, seemed to falter. Their wild energy fizzled slightly as they tried to make sense of the situation. Was it really nap time? What even was a nap? They looked at each other, baffled, and then at the food bowls. Lola, seeing her chance, stood up and barked authoritatively. That's right. You heard him. It's nap time, now lay down. For a brief, glorious moment, the Zoomies hesitated. Some of them even looked like they might actually lie down. The plan was working. And then, just as quickly as they had calmed down, the Zoomies snapped out of it. As if realizing they'd been duped, they let out a collective howl of rage and bolted in every direction at once, sending the carefully arranged food bowls flying and overturning the furniture. "Well, shit," Lola muttered as she dodged another Zoomie that nearly crashed into her. Midnight sighed, clearly disappointed. "Alright, new plan. We're gonna have to wear them down the old-fashioned way." Dexter peeked out from behind his fort, eyes wide. "What's the old-fashioned way?" Midnight grinned, their eyes gleaming. "We run." Chapter 4, The chase. The apartment had officially turned into a war zone. The Zoomies were bouncing off walls, tearing up furniture, and sending everything not nailed down flying through the air. It was pure chaos, a scene straight out of a renter's worst nightmare. "Run!" Chip panted, dodging a Zoomie that nearly bowled him over. "That's the plan." Midnight grinned, adrenaline already kicking in as they started darting through the apartment like they were born for this moment. "You've got a better idea?" Lola, already sprinting to avoid a collision with a lamp that one Zoomie had sent airborne, wasn't convinced. "Are we really supposed to just outrun them?" "Like. For how long?" "Forever." "Not forever," Midnight said, weaving around a corner as two Zoomies zipped after them. "Just long enough for them to tire themselves out. Trust me." Dexter, dragging his blanket with him as he ran, was already regretting everything about this plan. "This is insane. We're gonna die in here. Death by Zoomie." Bella, who had taken refuge behind the couch, poked her head out to watch the chaos unfold. "Well, at least you'll die doing what you love, Dex," freaking out and clutching that blanket like it's your emotional support animal. "Shut up, Bella." Dexter barked, still running in circles, the blanket dragging along the floor like a cape. Meanwhile, Chip was trying his best to keep up with Midnight, who was somehow managing to stay a few steps ahead of the Zoomies, despite their unrelenting speed. The sleek, dark dog moved like a shadow, twisting and turning through the chaos with a kind of graceful ease that made Chip wonder if Midnight had done this before. "Come on, Chip. Pick up the pace." Midnight called over their shoulder, dodging a Zoomie that had nearly slammed into them. "I'm trying." Chip wheezed, his legs already starting to burn from the exertion. "You make this look way too easy." "Because it is easy," Midnight said, flashing him a grin. "You just gotta stop thinking so much and start moving." Chip wasn't sure that advice was all that helpful, but before he could respond, a Zoomie barreled past him, so close that he could feel the gust of wind from its speed. "Oh, hell no!" Chip yelped, kicking into high gear. His survival instincts finally kicked in, and suddenly, he wasn't thinking anymore, just running. Lola, who had somehow ended up on the kitchen counter to avoid getting trampled, watched as the Zoomies continued their rampage, tearing through the apartment like Tasmanian devils on speed. "This is insane. There's no way we can keep this up." Midnight zipped past her, barely missing another Zoomie. "Don't worry, they'll slow down soon." "They always do." "Always?" Lola asked, frowning. "How many times have you done this?" Midnight winked at her before disappearing into the chaos again. "Enough to know how it ends." Dexter, still dragging his blanket and looking like he was on the verge of a mental breakdown, finally collapsed in the corner, panting heavily. "I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Let them take me. I'm ready for the sweet release of death." Bella strolled over casually, her tail flicking as she eyed Dexter with mild amusement. "Drama queen." "Shut up, Bella," Dexter muttered, burying his face in his blanket. "This is how it ends for me." "Alright, no one's dying," Chip panted as he skidded to a stop next to Dexter, his legs shaking from the effort of keeping up with the Zoomies. "We just have to outlast them." Midnight said they'll tire out soon, right? "Define soon," Dexter grumbled, refusing to lift his head from the blanket. Lola, still on the counter, sighed. "This plan is ridiculous. We're just running around in circles hoping they'll run out of energy before we do." Chip looked around the room, trying to assess the situation. The Zoomies were still zipping through the apartment at breakneck speed, but even he could tell they were starting to slow down, just a little. Midnight's plan was working, even if it didn't feel like it at the moment. Okay, maybe this plan is a little crazy, Chip admitted. But it's all we've got. So, let's just. Before he could finish his sentence, a Zoomie crashed into the side of the couch, sending it toppling over with a loud thud. Bella, who had been standing right next to it, barely jumped out of the way in time. Jesus Christ! Bella yelped, her cool demeanor finally cracking. These things are insane. They're Zoomies, what did you expect? Midnight shouted over the noise, still dodging and weaving like it was all just a game. Chip winced as another Zoomie barreled past him, nearly knocking him off his paws. Okay, seriously, how much longer can they keep this up? As if in answer to his question, one of the Zoomies, who had been running non-stop for what felt like hours, suddenly skidded to a halt in the middle of the room. It stood there, panting heavily, its eyes wide and wild, before collapsing into a heap on the floor. Oh my God, Dexter whispered, peeking out from his blanket. Did it just pass out? Midnight grinned, clearly pleased with the turn of events. Looks like it. Chip glanced around the room, noticing that the other Zoomies were starting to slow down too. Their erratic movements were becoming more sluggish, their once boundless energy finally beginning to fizzle out. It's working, Lola said, disbelief in her voice as she watched another Zoomie collapse onto the floor, too tired to keep going. They're actually wearing themselves out. Of course it's working, Midnight said, sauntering over to the couch and flopping down as if they hadn't just been sprinting for their life moments ago. The key to dealing with Zoomies is patience. They burn bright, but they burn fast. Chip, panting and exhausted, collapsed onto the floor next to Midnight. I can't believe that actually worked. Dexter, still curled up in his blanket, sighed in relief. So. We're not gonna die. Not today, Midnight said with a wink. Bella, still standing, looked around at the Zoomies who were now either passed out or too exhausted to move. So. What do we do with them now? Midnight shrugged, looking completely unfazed. We let them sleep it off. By the time they wake up, they'll be back to their normal, non-psychotic selves. Chip raised an eyebrow. And what if they're not? Midnight grinned. Then we run again. Chapter 5, Midnight's lair. As the apartment settled into a tense calm, the aftermath of the Zoomies' rampage was impossible to ignore. The once organized space now looked like the setting of a disaster movie. Torn pillows, shredded blankets, and upturned furniture were scattered across the room. A few picture frames dangled from the walls, swaying precariously. I can't believe they murdered my plants, Lola muttered dramatically, holding up the wilted remains of her prized fern. I mean, who kills a fern? They're practically indestructible. She stared at the broken pot, dirt scattered everywhere. This was sabotage. Pure, unfiltered sabotage. On the other side of the room, Dexter stood over the remains of his computer, eyes wide with disbelief. My poor baby, he whispered, picking up the cracked screen. Do you know how long it took to build this thing? He looked at the mangled mess of wires and circuits like he'd just lost a family member. This is a hate crime, and I will not be letting it slide. Bella, scrolling through her phone while standing in the middle of the mess, didn't even bother to look up. Guys, it's not that bad. At least we didn't die. Chip, standing by the door and peeking out cautiously, added, she's right. Considering what just happened, we got off easy. The Zoomies could have leveled this whole building. Bro, Dexter sniffled, my super, sweet computer. Lola rolled her eyes, tossing what was left of her fern onto the floor. We need to figure out what the fuck is going on with these Zoomies. What are they? Why are they so obsessed with running? And why do they target us? That's where I come in. Midnight's voice sliced through the chaos like a hot knife through butter. The mysterious dog had been unusually quiet since the Zoomies passed out, lounging on the couch like they hadn't just survived an energy-fueled ambush. Now, they stood, their figure cast in the dim glow of the street lights outside. Chip crossed his arms, not entirely sure if Midnight was messing with them or if they really knew more than they let on. Okay, Midnight. Spill. You obviously know more than you're telling us. Midnight gave a lazy smirk, sauntering over to the middle of the room. You're right, Chip. I do. The Zoomies are only the tip of the iceberg. What you guys saw was just a glimpse of what's coming. Dexter immediately perked up, his eyes wide. Wait. There's more than the Zoomies? His voice cracked a little as he asked. Of course there's more, Bella muttered, barely paying attention. There's always more. Midnight ignored the sarcasm. The Zoomies are part of a much larger problem. They're just the foot soldiers. Chaotic foot soldiers, sure, but there are bigger threats on the horizon. Lola, pacing now, couldn't help but throw her hands up. So you're telling us that we're stuck in the middle of some kind of dog apocalypse and you didn't think to mention this earlier? Midnight chuckled, shaking their head. It's not an apocalypse. Not yet, anyway. But things are escalating. The Zoomies weren't supposed to find you guys this soon. You've been noticed. Noticed by who? Chip asked, his voice lowering as he stepped closer to Midnight. He didn't like where this conversation was going. Midnight's smirk faded slightly. By the ones who pull the strings. The real powers behind the chaos. The ones who thrive on disorder and destruction. If we don't act fast, they'll come for you next. Bella finally looked up from her phone, frowning. And who exactly are they? What are we dealing with here? Midnight turned, heading for the door without answering. You'll find out soon enough. But for now, we need to regroup. Follow me. Follow you? Dexter asked, his voice rising in panic. Follow you where? You didn't even answer the question. Midnight paused at the door, looking over their shoulder. To my lair. The group blinked in unison, stunned into silence for a moment. Even Bella put her phone down. You're what? Chip asked, his brow furrowed. Midnight smiled. My lair. It's safe, secluded, and the only place where we can come up with a plan that might actually work. Wait, Dexter said, stumbling over his own words, you have a lair. Like, an actual secret lair. Midnight rolled their eyes. Well, duh. Where do you think I hang out when I'm not saving your tails from the sun and its tantrums? Lola crossed her arms. You seriously expect us to just follow you to your secret lair? Like we're supposed to trust you? Midnight sighed, turning to fully face them. Look, I get it. You barely know me. But I've been through this before, and if we stay here, we're sitting ducks. The Zoomies will come back. Others will come, too. And they'll be worse. Much worse. Bella squinted. Worse than the Zoomies? Midnight nodded. Much worse. The kind of dogs that make the Zoomies look like puppies playing tag. Chip exchanged a glance with Lola, who frowned. Well, that's encouraging. Dexter, ever the paranoid one, took a few hesitant steps forward. But how do we know this isn't some kind of trap? You could be leading us into something even worse. Midnight's eyes softened a bit, and for the first time, they looked almost vulnerable. I get that you don't trust me. But right now, I'm your best shot at surviving what's coming. Chip weighed his options. On the one paw, staying in the apartment meant they'd probably face the Zoomies again, and Midnight made it pretty clear they wouldn't stand a chance. On the other paw, following Midnight to some undisclosed location felt sketchy as hell. Finally, Chip sighed. Fine. We'll go. But if this lair of yours turns out to be a dog trap, I'm holding you responsible. Midnight smirked. Fair enough. Now, let's move. We don't have much time. Without another word, Midnight opened the door and led the way out into the night. One by one, the others followed, still unsure if this was the right decision but knowing they didn't have much choice. As they stepped into the cool night air, Bella caught up to Chip, her voice barely a whisper. I don't trust them. Me neither, Chip replied, glancing ahead at Midnight's confident stride. But we've come this far. What other option do we have? The group silently followed Midnight through the darkened streets, their anxiety rising with each step. Midnight moved with an eerie calm, completely at home in the shadows, while the rest of them felt like they were out past their bedtime. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a dilapidated building on the outskirts of the city. It was an old, run-down warehouse, overgrown with vines and barely standing. This is it, Midnight said, pushing open the creaky door. Welcome to my lair. The interior was surprisingly cozy. Despite the outside looking like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie, the inside was clean, organized, and filled with all kinds of tech gadgets and strange artifacts. Okay, I take it back, Dexter said, looking around in awe. This is actually kinda cool. Midnight smirked. Told you. Chip, still on edge, scanned the room. So. What's the plan? Midnight's eyes glinted in the dim light. We prepare for war. The gang exchanged uneasy glances. War. Against what? As Midnight moved deeper into the lair, the weight of what was coming settled heavily on all of them. Whatever Midnight was hiding, it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. Chapter 6, War Games. The morning after their arrival at Midnight's lair came too soon. The group had barely slept, the unease of what lay ahead gnawing at them like a bad case of fleas. Chip was the first to rise, shaking off the remnants of sleep and glancing around the dark warehouse-turned-bunker. Midnight had been up all night, tinkering with something at the back of the room, some sort of elaborate contraption made from scavenged parts and old dog toys. Good morning, sunshine, Midnight greeted without turning around, clearly aware of Chip's every movement. Ready for your first day of training? Training? Chip asked, rubbing his eyes with his paws. You didn't mention anything about training. Midnight grinned, finally standing and wiping grease from their paws. Well, if you want to survive the next wave of Zoomies, or worse, you'll need to learn how to handle yourselves. Can't just rely on good looks and sarcasm, you know. Dexter, who had been snoozing in the corner on a pile of squeaky toys, sat up abruptly. Wait. Did someone say training? Like, actual physical exercise? Lola, already stretching out her legs, shot him a look. What did you think was going to happen, Dex? Midnight's gonna give us magical powers or something. Bella, scrolling through her phone while perched on a broken stool, added, it'd be easier if we just had lasers for eyes. Just saying. Lasers? Really? Chip muttered. Can we at least try to be serious for 5 minutes? Midnight chuckled, tossing a ball at Chip. You'll want to hold on to that sense of humor. It might be the only thing keeping you sane by the time we're done. So what exactly does this training involve? Chip asked, eyeing the ball suspiciously. Midnight walked over to a large board on the wall, which was covered in diagrams and sketches that looked like they were drawn by someone on their 5th cup of coffee. We need to teach you how to outsmart the Zoomies. They're fast, but speed isn't everything. If you know how to anticipate their moves, you'll have a fighting chance. Plus, we'll work on building your stamina. Dexter groaned loudly. Stamina? Oh, no. That sounds like exercise. I'm allergic to exercise. Midnight raised an eyebrow. You're allergic to a lot of things, aren't you? Yes. Exercise, manual labor, responsibility, Dexter trailed off as he lay back down, trying to ignore the impending doom. Lola nudged him with her paw. Come on, drama queen. This could actually be fun. Fun. Dexter shot her a horrified look. Lola, your definition of fun is skewed. Alright, enough, Midnight interrupted, clapping their paws together. We don't have time for bickering. The Zoomies won't wait for us to get our act together. Chip sighed. Okay. What's first? Midnight grinned. First, we test your reflexes. Bella raised an eyebrow, finally putting her phone down. How? Midnight pulled out a remote from their pocket, pressing a button. The floor beneath them began to shift, opening up to reveal a large obstacle course. There were tunnels, hurdles, moving platforms, and, most disturbingly, giant foam balls suspended from ropes, swinging precariously. What the hell is that? Chip stammered, staring at the chaotic mess in front of him. This is my training ground, Midnight said proudly, their tail wagging ever so slightly. It's designed to test your agility, speed, and ability to dodge. If you can make it through this course, you'll be able to handle the Zoomies. Dexter looked like he was about to pass out. There's no way. I'm not cut out for this. I'm more of a sit on the couch and watch TV kind of dog. Which is exactly why you need this the most, Lola said, smirking as she stretched, already preparing to give the course a go. Bella stepped forward, eyeing the course like a contestant on a game show. I'll go first. Let's get this shit over with. Midnight smirked, pressing another button on the remote. Good luck. The course sprang to life. The tunnels whirred, the platform started moving, and the giant foam balls swung with surprising force. Bella, her eyes narrowed in focus, bolted forward. She dodged the first swinging ball, leaped over a hurdle, and slid through one of the tunnels with grace. The others watched in awe as she navigated the course with precision. But just as she was nearing the end, one of the moving platforms sped up, catching her off guard. She yelped as she missed a jump, tumbling into a pile of foam blocks. Damn it! Bella cursed, picking herself up and glaring at Midnight. Not bad, Midnight said, walking over to her. But you've got to anticipate the changes. The course is designed to mess with you. Bella grumbled, shaking foam out of her fur. Mess with me? It almost killed me. Dexter's face was pale. Yeah, I'm definitely not doing this. You're up next, Dexter, Midnight said with a mischievous grin. Dexter's eyes widened in horror. Me? But, no buts, Midnight interrupted. Get on the course. Dexter groaned, dragging his paws as he approached the starting line. If I survive this, I'm drinking straight from the toilet and none of you can stop me. Chip and Lola exchanged amused glances, knowing full well that Dexter was about to provide some much-needed comic relief. As soon as Midnight hit the button, Dexter took off, if you could call it that. He stumbled over the first hurdle, barely avoiding a faceplant, and crawled through the tunnel like a dog who'd just woken up from a nap. When the foam balls started swinging, Dexter yelped and flailed, narrowly avoiding getting smacked in the face. By the time he reached the moving platforms, he was panting heavily. He made a half-hearted attempt to jump, but his timing was off, and he ended up splashing into a pool of foam blocks. Well, that was something, Chip said, trying to stifle a laugh. Dexter pulled himself out of the foam, gasping for breath. I think I'm okay, Lola smirked. You'll live. Midnight shook their head, walking over to the group. Not bad for a first attempt. But you're gonna need to do a lot better if you want to survive the real thing. Dexter groaned from the ground. I hate every part of this. Chip stepped forward, his expression determined. My turn. Midnight gave a nod. Go for it. Chip took a deep breath, sizing up the course. He was ready. As soon as the course started, he was off. He ducked under the swinging foam balls, leaped over the hurdles with ease, and slid through the tunnels like a pro. But when he reached the moving platforms, things got tricky. Chip hesitated for just a second, and that was all it took for the platform to shift. He tried to jump, but was too early, and he stumbled, landing awkwardly in a pile of foam. "Ugh, so close," Chip muttered, pulling himself out of the foam. Midnight clapped their paws. "Good effort. You're all getting the hang of it. But we've still got a long way to go." Bella, shaking the foam from her fur again, sighed. "So, how long is this training going to last?" Midnight grinned. "As long as it takes. You guys need to be in top shape before the next wave of Zoomies hits." Dexter groaned. "Can't we just bribe them with munchies or something?" Chip shook his head. "I don't think Zoomies care about munchies, Dexter." Midnight chuckled. "No, they don't." With that, the gang resigned themselves to a long day of training, knowing that this was just the beginning. The Zoomies were out there, and they weren't going to stop until they were ready. Chapter 7, Chaos Theory. By the time evening rolled around, everyone was exhausted. The obstacle course had worked them to the bone, and even Lola, the most athletic of the group, was sprawled out on the floor like a spent rag doll. Dexter had found a corner to nap in, groaning every time he moved, as if even breathing had become an effort. Who knew being a badass would be this much work? Chip muttered, rubbing his aching legs. Midnight, as always, looked completely unfazed. They were leaning against the wall, chewing idly on a squeaky toy, their eyes half closed as if deep in thought. "You're all still too slow." Dexter, who had finally roused himself enough to lift his head, groaned loudly. "We're not slow, we're just selectively fast. We can speed up when it matters." Midnight raised an eyebrow. "And when exactly is that going to be? After the Zoomies have torn through your defenses? You think they're going to give you a timeout to catch your breath?" Lola, who had been sipping water from her bowl, looked up. "So what's their weakness, then?" "Every enemy has a weakness." Midnight smirked, clearly impressed with her question. "Their weakness is that they can't think beyond the next move. They're fast, but they don't strategize. If you can outmaneuver them, make them trip over their own paws, you can win." Chip frowned, pacing back and forth. "So, we don't have to beat them head-on. We just have to confuse them." "Exactly," Midnight said. "But don't get cocky. Confusing them is harder than it sounds. They thrive in chaos. The more disorganized things get, the stronger they become." "Great," Dexter muttered from his pile of blankets. "So we have to stay calm and collected while they're literally bouncing off the walls?" Midnight nodded. "Pretty much." Bella sighed dramatically. "This is sounding less and less fun by the minute." Lola rolled her eyes. "This was never supposed to be fun, Bella." "I know, but I was hoping for at least a little excitement." "Not. Whatever this is." Bella gestured vaguely around the room, as if to suggest that all the sweating, dodging, and near-miss concussions were beneath her. Chip stopped pacing, his mind whirring with possibilities. What if we preempt the chaos? If the Zoomies thrive on disorder, maybe we can set up traps to turn their own energy against them. Midnight's ears perked up at this. "Now you're thinking like a survivor." Dexter raised a paw. Wait. Traps? Are you suggesting we home alone the Zoomies? Like some sort of canine Culkin crew, Chip smirked. Exactly, Dex. We'll make sure they're afraid to even come near us. Dexter groaned again, dramatically flopping back into his blanket fort. I don't like this plan already. Ignoring Dexter's complaints, Midnight crossed the room to the board where they had scribbled down strategies earlier. Alright, Chip. Let's hear your plan. Chip's tail wagged slightly as he moved to the front, his confidence growing. Okay, so we know the Zoomies feed off of chaos, right? What if we create controlled chaos? We lead them into areas that seem chaotic to them but are actually carefully crafted to disorient them. Bella cocked her head. Carefully crafted chaos. Like. What? Setting up a fake chew toy convention. Chip chuckled. Not exactly. I'm thinking more along the lines of obstacle courses, like the one we trained on, except this time, we rig it to work in our favor. Tunnels that lead to dead ends, platforms that collapse, decoy balls that distract them. Lola's eyes lit up. That could work. If we can make the Zoomies trip over their own speed, they'll tire themselves out before they can even get to us. Midnight nodded, clearly impressed. It's risky, but I like it. We'll need to be quick with the setup, though. The Zoomies won't give us much time. Dexter groaned again. And by we, you mean Chip, right? Because there's no way I'm gonna be any help with that. Lola laughed. You'll help whether you like it or not, loser. Dexter flipped her off dramatically once more. Why is it always time to do something? Midnight ignored the theatrics and began drawing up plans for the trap. We'll need to gather supplies. Squeaky toys, old furniture, anything that can serve as a decoy. And we'll need to work fast. Chip turned to the others, a newfound determination in his voice. Let's move. We've got Zoomies to outsmart. Bella groaned but stood up. Fine. But I want it on record that I'm only doing this because I have nothing better to do. Lola laughed, rolling her eyes. You never have anything better to do, Bella. Bella flipped her hair. Exactly. With the plan in motion, the group set out to gather materials, each of them taking on different tasks under Midnight's careful watch. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as they transformed the warehouse into a battleground of controlled chaos. Chip and Midnight worked on the traps, placing them strategically around the room. Lola tested the obstacles, making sure they would hold up under pressure. Bella scouted for decoy items, tossing random objects into the mix to confuse the Zoomies. And Dexter. Well, Dexter mostly napped, but he occasionally moved something heavy when asked. As the night wore on, the warehouse began to take on an eerie, almost haunted atmosphere. The shadows cast by the makeshift obstacles loomed large on the walls, and every creak of the floor seemed to signal the approach of something sinister. Finally, as they finished their preparations, Midnight called everyone together. All right, listen up. The Zoomies could hit any minute now. Stick to the plan, stay sharp, and don't let them overwhelm you. Chip nodded, his jaw set with determination. We've got this. Lola cracked her knuckles. Bring it on. Bella, ever the reluctant warrior, sighed. Can't wait to see how this goes horribly wrong. Dexter, shaking with nervous energy, muttered, I'm too young to die. Midnight smirked, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Let the games begin. With that, the stage was set. The Gen Z dogs were ready. And somewhere out in the night, the Zoomies were coming. The real battle was about to begin. Chapter 8, The Zoomie Invasion PT2. The air in the warehouse was thick with tension. Midnight stood near the window, eyes narrowed as they scanned the streets below. The others stood nearby, every one of them on high alert. You sure they're coming tonight? Chip asked, his paws shifting nervously. Midnight nodded without looking away from the window. Trust me. I can feel it. They're close. Dexter, still half hiding behind a stack of pillows, peeked his head out. Can't we just, I don't know. Pretend we're not home? That works for trick-or-treaters, Dex, not for psychotic, hyperactive night terrors, Bella shot back. She was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, clearly trying to distract herself by doom-scrolling. Suddenly, there was a faint noise, like the rapid clicking of claws against pavement. It was getting louder. Faster. Lola's ears perked up. Do you guys hear that? Chip froze, every muscle in his body tightening as the sound grew closer. It was as if an army of claws was sprinting at full speed towards their door. Midnight turned away from the window, their expression unreadable. "They're here." Before anyone could respond, the door burst open with a deafening crash, splinters of wood flying everywhere. In an instant, the Zoomies had arrived. A chaotic blur of fur, teeth, and claws tore through the entrance, moving so fast that it was hard to make out how many there were. Dozens of hyperactive beasts, their eyes wide with uncontainable energy, filled the warehouse, bouncing off walls, overturning furniture, and racing through the carefully laid traps. Everyone to their positions. Chip barked, diving behind a stack of crates. The Gen Z dogs sprang into action. Lola sprinted toward one of the makeshift tunnels they'd set up earlier, her agile frame ducking and weaving through the obstacles with ease. Bella, somewhat less enthusiastically, dragged herself off the couch and took cover behind an overturned table. Dexter, predictably, screamed and bolted straight into his blanket fort, pulling the covers over his head. Midnight remained eerily calm, standing in the middle of the chaos like they were born for it. "Remember," they called out, "let them think they're in control." But controlling the Zoomies was like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. They were everywhere, zipping back and forth, barely pausing for a second. One of them, a scrappy-looking mutt with wiry fur, barreled past Lola, nearly knocking her off her feet. Another was gnawing on one of Bella's decoy squeaky toys, slobbering all over it while barking at the top of its lungs. "This is insane!" Chip shouted from his hiding spot. "How are we supposed to outsmart this?" Midnight moved swiftly, dodging a Zoomie that tried to nip at their tail. "Patience, Chip. We'll get our chance." Lola leaped onto a high platform, looking down at the madness below. "I thought you said they were fast but not smart." "I did," Midnight replied, effortlessly dodging another Zoomie. "But we've got to make the traps work for us. Wait for them to get tangled up in their own chaos." "Yeah, about that," Bella called from behind the table, "they don't seem like the tripping type." At that moment, one of the Zoomies, an overly eager spaniel, slammed headfirst into a stack of crates, sending them toppling over. The dog yelped in surprise as it disappeared beneath a pile of cardboard boxes, its legs flailing comically. Chip's eyes lit up. "Did you see that? It worked." Midnight grinned. "Told you. They may be fast, but they're not invincible." Gradually, the traps began to do their job. The Zoomies, too focused on their own speed and energy, failed to notice the carefully placed decoys and false tunnels. One after another, they fell into the Gen Z dogs' traps, getting stuck in tight spaces, tripping over obstacles, or, in the case of one particularly enthusiastic pug, launching themselves into a pit filled with pillows. "This is actually working," Lola shouted, a triumphant smile on her face as she watched another Zoomie get tangled in a mess of ropes. But the victory was short-lived. As the number of trapped Zoomies increased, their remaining pack members seemed to grow even more feral. Instead of tiring out, they became more focused, more dangerous. The wild, chaotic energy that had defined their initial attack was now channeling into something more aggressive. They weren't just running for fun anymore, they were hunting. "They're adapting," Midnight shouted, a rare hint of concern in their voice. "Stick to the plan. Don't let them corner you." Dexter, still trembling inside his blanket fort, peeked out just long enough to see one of the Zoomies, a hulking German shepherd, make a beeline for his hiding spot. "Chip!" Dexter screeched. "Help!" Chip glanced over, his heart pounding as he saw Dexter's fort shaking from the force of the German shepherd slamming into it. Without thinking, Chip darted forward, weaving through the chaos until he reached Dexter. "Come on, Dex!" Chip yelled, grabbing his friend's tail and yanking him out of the collapsing fort. The two of them barely managed to avoid the shepherd's snapping jaws as they bolted across the room. "Thank you," Dexter panted, his eyes wide with terror. Don't thank me yet. Chip replied, glancing over his shoulder. We're not out of this. Midnight, still in control of the situation, called out to them. Regroup. We're running out of space. The Gen Z dogs regrouped near the center of the warehouse, dodging the Zoomies who were now swarming with terrifying precision. Midnight. Lola called out. We need a new plan. Midnight's eyes narrowed as they surveyed the situation. We don't need a new plan, they said calmly. We just need to trigger the final trap. Final trap? Bella asked, her voice tinged with desperation. What final trap? Midnight's smirk returned. The one they won't see coming. Without explaining further, Midnight sprinted toward the back of the warehouse, where a large, unassuming pile of squeaky toys had been haphazardly stacked earlier. The Zoomies, distracted by the Gen Z dog's movements, didn't notice Midnight's approach, until it was too late. With a single, fluid motion, Midnight pulled a lever hidden beneath the pile of toys. Suddenly, the entire floor beneath the Zoomies gave way, revealing a pit of foam blocks, like a giant playpen for dogs. The Zoomies, too fast to stop themselves, barreled into the pit, their frantic barking replaced by confused yelps as they tried to scramble out of the soft foam. Chip blinked, stunned. You had a trapdoor. Midnight grinned. What? You didn't think I'd let them tear up the place that easily, did you? Lola burst out laughing, finally relaxing as she watched the Zoomies struggling to escape the pit. Okay, that was pretty epic. Bella slumped onto the floor, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. I'm never running again. Dexter, still shaking from his close call, nodded fervently. I second that. As the last of the Zoomies were safely contained in the foam pit, Midnight crossed their arms and turned to the others. You did good, team. But don't get too comfortable. There's always another storm on the horizon. Chip, still catching his breath, grinned. Whatever it is, we'll be ready. But little did they know, the real storm was yet to come. Chapter 9, Zoomie Aftermath. The foam pit was strangely quiet, except for the occasional grumbling Zoomie trying in vain to crawl out. The Gen Z dogs sat sprawled across the floor, completely drained. Midnight leaned against a wall, arms crossed, still looking cool and collected despite the chaos that had unfolded. Chip glanced at the pit, then at the gang. So, what do we do with them now? Yeah, we can't just leave a bunch of deranged Zoomies trapped in foam forever, Lola added, though she didn't seem to be in a hurry to solve the problem. Midnight shrugged. They'll burn out soon. All that energy has to go somewhere. Once they tire themselves out, we'll let them loose, away from here. Lucky them, Bella muttered, swiping through her phone. Maybe the DoorDash drive will want them. She said, trying not to laugh. Chip let out a relieved breath and collapsed onto a nearby pile of pillows. Well, at least that's over. Yeah, or is it? Lola agreed, stretching out her legs. Dexter shuddered. Please don't jinx us. I can only handle one disaster a day. Midnight chuckled softly. You'll learn to adapt. That's the thing about surviving chaos, it never stops, but you get better at handling it. Bella raised an eyebrow, finally tearing her eyes away from her phone. You sound like you speak from experience. Midnight's gaze flickered for a second. More than you know. Chip leaned up on his elbows, studying Midnight. You never talk about yourself. Where did you come from anyway? Lola nodded, intrigued. Yeah, you kind of just appeared out of nowhere, helped us take down the sun, and now you're here, dealing with Zoomies like it's just another day in the life. Midnight shifted slightly, their cool demeanor never wavering. I've been around. I saw a lot of things. Some good, some bad. You guys just happened to be in the right, or wrong, place at the right time. Dexter furrowed his brow. But why help us? I mean, you didn't have to, right? Midnight hesitated, glancing at the foam pit where the last of the Zoomies were finally beginning to tire. Let's just say, I know what it's like to be thrown into chaos with no warning. And sometimes, helping others deal with it makes it easier to face your own. Chip stared at Midnight, sensing something deeper behind their words, but didn't push. Well, whatever your reason, we're glad you showed up. Twice. Midnight smirked. Don't get used to it. Lola sighed, standing up and dusting herself off. Okay, so what's the plan now? Do we just wait for the next disaster to hit, or do we get a break? Midnight straightened up, eyes gleaming. You'll get a break, sure. But don't get too comfortable. Chaos is unpredictable. It could hit tomorrow, next week, or even next year. Bella groaned, lying flat on her back. Can't we just have one normal day? Just one. Dexter raised a paw. Seconded. Midnight chuckled. Normal is overrated. But fine, enjoy your downtime while you can. I'll keep an eye out for any incoming storms. Chip sighed, closing his eyes as he finally allowed himself to relax. Well, if we've got some time, I'm gonna take a nap. Wake me up if the world's ending again. The others murmured in agreement, each of them retreating to their own corners of the room to rest. Midnight remained by the window, watching the streets outside, always on alert. The night had been one, but the calm that followed only hinted at more to come. Chapter 10, Enter Echo. The aftermath of the Zoomie invasion had left the Gen Z dogs more worn out than they'd ever been. Now back at the apartment. Chip lay sprawled across the couch, Lola was nursing a snack in the kitchen, Dexter had retreated back to his blanket fortress, and Bella was half-heartedly scrolling through her phone, her eyes barely open. Midnight stood by the window as always, staring out into the night. It had been quiet for a while now, and the eerie calm after the chaos made everyone uneasy. It was the kind of quiet that suggested something was about to go down. Chip yawned loudly. Okay, can we officially say we can survive anything? Dexter peeked his head out from his fort, said. Please, for the love of all that is holy, don't jinx us. Lola sipped her drink and smirked. Yeah, Chip. The universe has a way of listening when you say shit like that. Just as the tension started to ease and the gang thought they could finally chill, there was a sudden loud crash from the hallway outside the apartment. Everyone froze, ears perking up simultaneously. What the hell was that? Bella muttered, sitting up straight. Midnight, already on alert, narrowed their eyes at the door. Stay here. Before Chip could protest, Midnight was already halfway out the door. The others waited anxiously as the seconds dragged on. They could hear Midnight's faint footsteps and then a voice. Hey, watch it. I'm fragile, damn it. The voice was deep, gravelly, and carried an attitude with it that suggested the owner was anything but fragile. A moment later, Midnight returned, but they weren't alone. Standing next to them was a muscular pit bull, white with brown spots and a scar running across his muzzle with a permanent scowl etched onto his face. His body was scarred from head to tail, he looked like he had been through some shit, and survived. Midnight rolled their eyes. Everyone, meet Echo. Echo snorted. Yeah. I know I'm late to the party, but you try escaping from a pack of rabid raccoons jumping you in the middle of the night. The gang stared at Echo, blinking in confusion. Raccoons? Where? Dexter asked, his voice cracking slightly. Echo gave a huff, his gaze shifting to the group with a hint of disdain. Long story. Let's just say I've had my share of battles, and I don't need any more of those furry little fucks coming after me. Chip, ever the brave one, stepped forward. So, you're Echo. Where exactly did you come from? From a bad raccoon date, apparently, Lola muttered under her breath. Midnight smirked and leaned against the doorframe. Echo here has been around. Survived some pretty gnarly situations. Knows the streets like the back of his paw. He's a little rough around the edges, but trust me, he's solid. Echo rolled his eyes. I'm more than solid, I'm unbreakable. Unbreakable, huh? Bella said with a raised eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. So what's your deal, Echo? You just show up here, telling war stories, and expect us to welcome you with open paws? Echo met her gaze, his voice lowering a bit. Look, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here because I got nowhere else to go. The streets are cold, the raccoons are ruthless, and I figured you guys could use someone who knows how to handle the dark. Chip tilted his head. Handle the dark. Midnight glanced at Echo, an almost imperceptible nod passing between them. Yeah, Echo here has a history. Let's just say he's had some bad experiences with being stuck in dark places. Echo growled under his breath, clearly not keen on talking about it. Yeah, well, you would too if you'd been locked in a dumpster for hours with those freaky little bastards. Lola snickered. So, you're afraid of the dark? Echo's eyes flickered, but he didn't deny it. Afraid? Nah. Let's just say I've learned to respect it. Chip exchanged glances with the others. There was something about Echo, despite his gruff exterior, he seemed like he had depth. Like Midnight, there was more to him than met the eye. Well, Chip said slowly, if you're sticking around, I guess we'll have to make room for you. Welcome to the crew, Echo. The canine Culkin crew? Dexter asked, grinning. Echo raised an eyebrow. Crew? You guys some kinda club? Bella rolled her eyes. Something like that. Dexter shuffled out of his pillow fortress, clearly wary of the new guy but trying to be polite. So, what's your specialty? Besides raccoon evasion? Echo grinned, flashing sharp teeth. Surviving. Plain and simple. And maybe teaching you guys a thing or two about handling yourselves when things get rough. Teaching us? Lola chuckled. We just annihilated that flaming lamp in the sky and survived an army of Zoomies. What do you think you could teach us? Echo's grin didn't falter. Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea what's out there. The room fell silent again. Midnight's gaze lingered on Echo, a strange tension in the air. Echo's got a point, Midnight said. There's a lot we haven't faced yet. And having him around could be useful. Chip nodded. Alright then. Echo, welcome to the family. Echo didn't smile, but he gave a curt nod, his eyes betraying a glimmer of gratitude. Thanks. Just don't expect me to hold paws and sing campfire songs with you guys. I'm here to survive. That's it. Bella snorted. Trust me, we're not the paw-holding type. As the group settled back down, Echo took a seat by the door, always keeping one ear to the ground, just in case. Midnight watched him for a moment, then returned to their usual spot by the window, their expression unreadable. The night had brought them a new ally, but with Echo's arrival came the promise of more danger ahead. Something told them that their quiet days were over. And for better or worse, Echo was now part of the Gen Z dogs.